Video showing an 18-year-old high school senior accused of killing 3 people, shooting and wounding.
Hey, Mark. Okay. Got our meeting, our agenda here for today's meeting. If everybody has a chance to look at it, if there's anything that needs to be added or subtracted, please speak up. If not, I'll seek a motion for approval. So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Moving on now to our minutes from May 2nd. If everyone's had a chance to look at it, it was a very short meeting. So if there's no need for amendments, I'll seek a motion for approval. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Going on down now to chairman report. I really don't have much to report on. Right now, there's a lot going on in Cashers. I'm sure Mr. Elders can attest to that. It's been a fun couple of weeks, but everybody I think is getting ready to finally see some leaves on trees and it's springtime. Oh, so nice. So, any other commissioner reports?
I was actually gonna go make some stops at some places today, being we got rained on yesterday. Got called into work.
Nice.
So, but I live by the rec center and just want to update everybody. The rec center is looking awesome. It's really, really coming along. So,
Thank you. Any comments from the public tonight? No? Moving on now to Ms. Fox and the financial report for April and the budget ordinance limits. Ms. Fox.
I'll go over the highlights for the month of April. The general fund revenues collected to dates. $70,315,933. That's 84.55% of budget. So it's over the percentage by 1.22%. The general fund expenditures to date, $62,416,297. That's 76.35% of budget. And it's under 6.98%. The revenues are $7,899,696 more than the expenditures this time. The ad valorem taxes collected are at 100.58% of budget at $42,679,771. The motor vehicle tax collected is $1,366,099. That's 77.69% of budget. And the prior year taxes collected, $420,499. That's 60.03% of budget. The sales tax that we received for the month of April, which represented January sales, was $1,524,860. That's 13.04% more than we received in April of 2022. The Article 46 distribution was $163,417, and the average for the fiscal year is 8.47%. The landfill disposal fees collected, $2,839,767. That's 97.64% of budget. And the prior year disposal fees, $60,031. That's 75.04% of budget. Also attached to the report is Via Health's third quarter finance report. Their revenues total $601,993,657, and expenditures $637,092,056. Had a net loss and a less the risk reserve of $99,045,298. The operating cash available is $166,384,213, and the spendable cash is $1,202,660. The growth revenues of the planning, it's above the budgeted amount by $530. The code enforcement is 1.70% more than for this period. Environmental health's over 6.97%, and registered deeds is under 3.61%. So still good growth going on throughout the county. The general fund contingency balance at the end of April was $420,046. I'd be glad to answer any questions on the report.
Is the variance in the revenues being so high, is that just timing?
It's timing.
Any additional questions by the board?
Okay, I've got budget amendments. The first one is general fund. It's an increase of $825,894.32, and comes from insurance settlements, Duke Energy grant, Dogwood grant, North Carolina Office of State Budget Management grant for registered deeds, and investment earnings of $725,000. The next one is project ordinance amendment for the indoor pool facility. It's an increase of $750,000 from investment earnings going into contingency in the project. The next one is for the Dillsboro Complex Project Fund. It's investment earnings of $10,000 going into contingency in that fund. The SEC Health Science Building Project Fund, investment earnings, $11,055 going into contingency in that project fund. The School Improvement Project Fund, increase of $25,000 going into other costs in their security projects. The final one is for Green Energy Park. It's a net increase of $70,000. Investment earnings, $5,000, rents, $5,000, and a general fund contribution of $60,000. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
It's been a good year for investment earnings.
Has been. Is there a motion to approve the finance report and the budget ordinance amendments presented by Ms. Fox?
Make the motion, we approve both.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ms. Henson to go over tax collector and refund reports for April.
Good evening. For April, the 2022 taxes collected for the county were $387,361. The delinquent taxes collected were $52,682. The total collections for the month of April was $441,136.92. Refunds were $560. Releases of $871.53, and the rate at the end of the month was 98.4%. Any questions?
That's just a small amount of refunds.
Yeah, for the month, yes, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the tax collector and refund reports for April? And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on now to Mr. Elders with fireworks display requests.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can't remember if this is the first time I've been before this board of the fireworks request, but in case it is, I'll just give you a real quick rundown on why we do this. It's General Statute 14-413 that requires county commissioners to approve all public displays of fireworks based on some law changes that were made about 15 years ago. We have interlocal agreements with the town, Webster, Dillsboro, so if anything happens there, we do theirs as well. It comes through this board. We're required to get application from the FB licensed licensed fireworks display operators to apply for a show. Then they have to have liability insurance in an amount of $500,000, and they have to list the right people, property owners on that. Get a copy of that. We get a copy of their site plan. We go out and make a site visit to everyone before I come before you. I also speak to the fire chief involved every time. This particular one's on a Tuesday night, and I did call twice to confirm that it's a wedding on a Tuesday night at Castle Lady Hawk, which is on the way up to Bear Lake on Shook Cove Road. Chief Green is aware of it, and he's prepared. They've shot at that site before. You'll probably see many more weddings coming up, but that's all we have. The next month, I hope to be back in front of you for about 10 or 11 shows for 4th of July. Just that one today. Yeah, it looks like it for a little while. Any questions on any of it, just the procedure or this particular show? Or?
I think I'm good. Does anybody else have any questions? Is there a motion to approve the fireworks display?
I'll make a motion that we approve the fireworks display.
I'll second.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Stribling?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Chairman Ludson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Elders? Moving on now to the Pinnacle Park Master Plan funding request. Mr. Adams.
Go ahead and where that going here? Let me.
So this is a follow-up to the work session in which the request was presented to the board for $50,000 to go towards a $150,000 planning project for Pinnacle Park and what is known as, I believe, Black Rock. And so just, Mr. Chairman, I mentioned to you and thought you thought we should put this on the agenda for discussion.
I think that it's a wonderful plan. Well, I think that having a master plan is going to help us determine what happens up there and really is going to be an asset for the community. I think tourism will be high in that area. So I think it's a worthwhile venture for the county and the area. So, does anyone else have anything?
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve the master plan funding for Pinnacle Park.
Do you think they'll have a traffic impact analysis done within that master plan? Or?
I'm not aware that they have what we would consider a true traffic impact analysis in regards to, you talking about going on the backside if we do eventually have some type of.
The current path at Fisher Creek, it's pretty narrow
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And the house is pretty close to the road.
I really don't know. Mr. Coward did not mention anything. I don't think, I would dare say, I would not think there would be a true traffic impact analysis in what was presented to you, because generally speaking, that does cost and that would impact the overall cost, and I'm just not aware of that being in the scope of work.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Any additional discussion?
I just agree with you and Commissioner Jones on it.
Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Stribling?
Yes.
Chairman Ludson?
Yes. Okay, moving on now to the memorandum between the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians and Public Health. Mr. Adams.
Yes, sir. And if you'll remind me, Commissioner Smith, I've got the request for proposals. I was trying to scan through it real quick to see. I just don't recall there being a traffic
Yeah,
impact.
I didn't either, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
And I know it will affect the traffic there
Yeah.
and how much, depends on how popular it is.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Really increase the parking area up there a little bit,
Yes, sir.
but that doesn't address traffic.
The next item is the memorandum of understanding. Health Director Shelley Caraway was planning on attending tonight. She actually decided not to go to a regional meeting. She was going to attend, but she ended up, she has a temporary illness, so she apologizes she's not able to attend tonight. So what you do have enclosed in your packets is it's basically the agreement that was discussed before. If you recall, I brought it at the work session it was a red line version that had multiple items in it, which also included the exclusion of the infinity pool language in there. What this is, and we do have Patrick, our attorney, here online. I'd asked Patrick to go back and look at it and create a copy that removed the exclusion language. And so what you have is a clean copy of the latest version of the proposed memorandum of agreement from the state that excludes the infinity pool exclusion language. I also want to go ahead and let the board know that I have had conversations with Swain County, with Cherokee County, obviously ourselves, and Haywood County. And I hadn't had direct conversations with Graham, but I know our health director has had conversations with their health director. I can tell you that what's interesting is Cherokee County had already taken this issue up previously, before the exclusion language was even introduced. And so I've got an agreement that all the counties have agreed that they just don't feel like that type of exclusion language should be in a regional agreement. And I can tell you what's in front of you today has actually already been approved by Cherokee County, approved and signed by Cherokee County. I can tell you also that I believe Haywood County, different counties handle these agreements differently. And so, whereas here we bring this agreement to the board, in Haywood County, it really just goes directly to Ira Dove, who is over Human Services there. And then in Swain County, it goes to their health director and also their Human Services director there. And so I believe and it's up to the board, if this board wished to move forward with this, then I believe what we would end up having is Cherokee, Jackson, Swain, and Haywood. I'm pretty sure that would follow through with this particular agreement itself. I can directly speak with my communications with Haywood and Swain that the managers have responded and they believe the language should be removed. Again, I can't speak for Graham County at this point. If the board chooses to move forward with this, I believe we would get basically all the county signatures on it. But I also believe, I just want to let the board know that we will be approached by the state and by the Eastern Band probably to discuss that exclusion separate from this regional agreement. Where, all the counties that I spoke to agreed, it just felt like it had nothing to do with a regional agreement. And what we're attempting not to do is jeopardize a regional agreement that's in regard to the safety and welfare of the citizens of the tribe. And so that's the main primary reason why I think all the counties are saying, well, let's just move forward without the exclusionary language. And that issue needs to be debated and discussed amongst Jackson, the tribe, and the state. And Patrick, did you have a chance to review it one more time as far as what I sent you from Cherokee County?
I did and confirmed it's the same.
It is the same, yes.
Is there any questions for Mr. Adams or Patrick? If not, I'll seek a motion for approval.
Make a motion that we approve the MOU.
Second? Second. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Stribling? Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Chairman Letson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on now to the jail MAT grant.
Yes, sir. This is a follow-up again for another item that was at the work session. And what you do have enclosed in your packets is the proposed memorandum of agreement between the state of North Carolina Department of Public Safety, Purchasing and Logistics Office, and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. And this really is the MOU. The request before the board today would be for the board to authorize the sheriff and/or county staff, county manager to sign off on documentation necessary to proceed forward with this. It is with the sheriff's office, but it may require my signature or it may require the sheriff's signature. That's the reason I'm including both. And just to quickly go through, just a reminder, it does have the information in regards to, let me scroll to it. I apologize for everybody looking at home. It is the same information that was on the cover letter that provided to you before. They did have conditions. They recommend consultation with the producer of the drug itself to see if we can find any savings with it. Develop a detailed implementation plan for Vivitrol. Clarify the subcontractors, clarify administration of Vivitrol in the community, and submit the 12-month budget. So that is your second document. Enclosed is the budget. And just a reminder, they're just wanting to see a 12-month budget, but that includes salary for a jail-based coordinator for 2 years. It includes, it collapsed all the monies for the contract for the services for peer support. And then also includes funding for Vivitrol. That's 162 doses. And then the administration fee is for the administration contract necessary for what the sheriff needs to go into for somebody to administer this grant. And so the grant total and the grant award is $493,788.
Is there a motion to approve this grant and authorization?
I'll make a motion to approve the grant.
Is there a second? Second. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Stribling?
Yes.
Chairman Letson?
Yes. All right, moving on now to fiscal year 23-24 proposed budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Commissioner Jones, this hard copy that I just handed out will actually be online tomorrow. Otherwise, we'll just try to get the hard copy to you as soon as we can. But sometime tomorrow, you should be able to go online and download all the information that we're discussing today.
Okay, thank you.
And what you should be able to see, I'm actually pulling the information up now, so you should be able to follow along with the conversation. And then, Brian, if you would, just make sure that the camera for YouTube and so forth is on this document. All right, thanks, sir. Pleased to present to the board and to the public the proposed fiscal year 23-24 budget. What you do have is the budget document in front of you. And what I'd like to do is, this is for the board, but it's also for the public at home. This information will be online sometime tomorrow, and hard copies of this document will be in my office and also in the finance office. Before I jump into the budget message itself, and that's where I'm going to spend most of my time today, what I'd like to do is just go through and just give a little bit of information for the public on how to view this document. As you can see, it shows it's a 169-page document, but if you just follow through with some of the recommendations here, this is a much easier document to follow through and find the information you're looking for than it may appear. So I'll just scroll through. The finance office has done a good job of putting a nice table of contents to help everybody find the information that you may be looking for. And so I encourage everybody to go through and look at these table of contents. Like I say, I will concentrate today on the letter to the board or the budget message. But before I do that, I'm just going to quickly scroll through some of this information. And so as you can see, there is a table of contents that's in alphabetical order. And so if you read through the budget message and through some of the other information and you see a department named or you see a program named, I encourage you to go back to the table of contents, look it up in the table of contents, and it'll take you straight to the page of where that information is related to the budget. And so if you scroll down, I'm going to go past my budget message real quick. And I apologize at home, but what I just want to do is show people. Once you get past the budget message, there is a full description of the proposed budget, the general fund, along with all the other funds. I will note, you'll see this general fund increase shows a 7.06% increase. What you'll see in my budget message is around a 5%. Because I'm comparing that to the amended budget versus the original budget. But this will show all the different information. You can go down and see that I do find information such as this. This shows the proposed expenses for each of these organizations, shows the revenues, and shows the actual county share. This is as close as we can get to showing the public where your tax dollars, your property tax dollars, and your sales tax dollars go. Because this ultimately shows revenues from the state, from our fees, and things of that nature. So one of the things I always like to point out is social services. If I can find it. Excuse me. Where am I here? Education Tax Reserve. Transportation. Bear with me. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, okay. I was down below. You can see it's $8.7 million. And you can see from social services we received $5 million. So you can see 42% of their budget is actually county dollars. So when you see it as a percentage of our overall budget, you'll see human services is a large percentage of our overall budget. But I want to point out that human services also has the largest percentage of revenues to offset their costs. So as I go down, you can see we do have other information in this packet, whether it be census data or county information, and then scrolling through an org chart. And then ultimately we do have a whole section on fees and rate schedules. And again, if you go back to the table of contents, it'll take you straight here. But I'm going to scroll through our fees and rate schedules. And then from the fee, after that, we do have departmental goals for every department. And so I encourage everybody to go through and read departmental goals going into the next fiscal year for every department. And then as I scroll through the departmental goals, and then what you will see is we do have other information in regards to where the revenues come from, and a pie chart showing that, and then also showing who the highest taxpayers are in Jackson County. So this is just, I believe, interesting information for the public as a whole. Scrolling down, we also see information like collection rates and sales tax revenues, and as we all know, that has been going up every year. And then analysis of our fund balance, and then ultimately going down and looking at information in regards to our debt, and then our actual debt service payments for the next multiple years. And then you can see here, this is analysis, again, of our revenue, property taxes. And as you can see, the majority of our revenue is property taxes, and then the next is sales tax themselves. And then ultimately scrolling down, you can see here, I want to point out about this chart versus the chart you will see in my budget message. You'll see in this chart, which shows education is 17% of our expenditures. But what that doesn't do is that actually separates out debt service. In my chart, what I do is I put school debt service in into education expenses. So that's why when you look at my chart, you'll see that education actually represents 20% of our budget, because I moved the debt service for education into that pie chart. This also gives analysis of our positions by function. So if you want to know how many positions Human Services has or how many positions Safety has, the sheriff, you can see this over multiple years. And then ultimately, we get down to a general fund summary. And then we eventually get to the line item detail. And the remainder of this budget, so as you can see, I've gone through about 67 pages, but the remainder of this budget is really line item detail for the whole budget. So what I always recommend people do is, if they're looking to go and learn more about their county budget, I always recommend to go initially to the table of contents and initially to the county manager's budget message. And then from there, start exploring and looking at the table of contents and researching the information that you're looking for. So having said that, I'll proceed forward with the budget message. The proposed fiscal year 23-24 general fund budget for Jackson County is proposed to be $88,106,428. Remember, that's general fund. That's where your property taxes go. We do have other funds that fall outside of that $88 million. This proposal constitutes an approximate increase of 5.9%. And that's the reason I try to point out the difference between 5 and 7 is that's over your current budget as of today. And the budget is balanced and presented in accordance to the Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act, presenting appropriations by categories of expenses and revenues by source. All proposals under the general fund are based upon a budget with a tax rate of 38 cents per $100 value. I learned to just start off with that initially, because what I found in the past, so there is no proposed tax increase. I found in the past that if I put that in the back, everybody's rushing to see if there's a proposed tax increase. And so I just start off with that to let you know at this point, there is no proposed tax increase. The total expenditures by function, the $88,106,000, you can see that public safety is 24.53%. Education is 24.06%. That's where I was showing you the other chart that's in there that shows education at 17. That doesn't have the debt service in. And then you can see the next highest amount is Human Services of 21.54%. That's the reason I point out revenues to you for Human Services, because they actually have some of the highest revenues. And then General Government is 16.56%. A categorical overview. Again, what I attempt to do, if you recall, you've been given a detail of the budget, personnel, capital, and things of that nature. So if I did not list it in this personnel, then it's not in the recommended budget. You can go back to that initial list given to you. You can see what's in and what's not. The proposed budget contains the recommendations. The recommendations include a one-step increase for all employees. If you recall, that's going to be based upon their years of service. That would be either a 3.15, a 3%, or a 1.5%, depending on what step they're currently on. It's also being proposed a 3% cost of living adjustment for all employees. If you recall, this was discussed back at our budget planning session. And then we also talk a little bit about workers' compensation and liability insurance. It's recommended, again, that we give cost of living of 3% and then a one-step increase to all employees. That cost is approximately $1,011,788 additional cost to Jackson County. So to give you an idea, that does, when we start talking about cost of living adjustments and so forth for our payroll, that does mean a significant amount of money. We did have several requests, as you noticed, for reclassifications. The classifications and compensation study was approved by the board back on March 15th, 2022. It was implemented to be effective January of 2022. So in March of 2022, all of our employees, based upon this compensation study, received significant increases in pay. Also, the whole ranges were adjusted and things like that nature. There are millions of dollars put into this study. Then, if you look from March to July 1, months later, then there was an additional pay increase to all employees. Months later, they received a step increase, and so at this point, what it's being recommended is that the salary plan that's been implemented, basically does allow for recruitment for both inexperienced and experienced personnel. You remember, we do have a recruitment policy for experience, so I have not recommended any salary reclassifications in this proposal. But what I have done is the following are other personnel recommendations that are included, and this is mainly new personnel. And so, this new personnel really is based upon multiple needs, based upon voter approval, the aquatic center, based upon safety, the request we got from the sheriff's office for the additional personnel, and it's based upon basically the new facilities that have been built that we need to maintain. And so if you really think in those terms, when I go through and look at these new personnel, that is what the new personnel is being recommended for. So if you look at number one, I'm sorry, get a drink while I'm talking here. If you look at number one, housekeeping, it's recommended we add a housekeeper to be used for multiple facilities. So as we transition in the next year, we're going to be bringing on an animal shelter, and then mid-year we're going to be bringing on an aquatic center. And so at this point, we're trying to bring on a housekeeper, and then once those facilities get fully operational, we will probably be having an additional conversation next year about what it takes to keep our facilities clean. Grounds, we are asking for an additional general or utility worker because we do have the Dillsboro complex. That is the green energy park that's coming open. And then if you look at the sheriff, there's recommended to be 4 road patrol deputies and 1 detective for drug enforcement. So that's 5 new people. The sheriff had asked for what I believe he called a drug enforcement deputy. At this point, we don't have that category, but this is the same grade as a detective. So what's being recommended is we put that in there, and then ultimately the sheriff, if he calls him detective or road patrol, it's really drug enforcement. It's what we're attempting to do as far as this recommendation goes. And then you can see number 4 there, the jail is to increase staff by 1 detention officer. Now remember, that doesn't include what you just approved. It was that grant will be another officer that goes into the jail. That'll be a grant-based officer for 2 years. So that will actually come back to you for approval. The next is code enforcement. This is a 50% half-time administrative assistant. What is included in this budget is the $450,000 for that new software that was presented to this board. This really does need some assistance. Tiffany presented here, she's going to have to spend a lot of time on this software implementation. So she needs assistance in the cashier's office to help her so she can go in the back of the facility 2-3 times a week to try to help ensure proper implementation of the software. You can see Green Energy Park is 50% time for a programming manager. Animal control is 1 animal shelter attendant. I can't tell you, too, what's in the budget is additional money for part-time assistants. Now, what this is for is currently they have an admin person, but that admin person is spending all of their time parking the kennels. And so what this is intended to do is leave that admin person, because there's a whole front of this new facility we just bought. We're going to have somebody sitting there to help deal with the public that comes in and out. And so ultimately, by putting this position in, it should free up their admin position and then also putting part-time. The whole goal of this facility is to be open to the public 6 days a week. We need to have a weekend day open, especially if we start talking about adoption programs and things of that nature. So we're attempting to assist with that. The request is much higher than that, and this may have to be reviewed as we go through and open, because if there's a bigger demand from the public for that facility to be open longer, then there'll be a bigger demand for people to be there at the facility itself. Social services, there is 2 social worker IT positions. This is really in regards to achieve better outcomes for our children and families. That is a particular program, Safety Organized Practice is a new software system. But there's something that was presented and discussed that I discussed with the director. There's actually a private program called START. I can't name the acronym, but it's really specifically geared towards families and children. I almost recommended that to the board at this point, and that would have been several $100,000. But the state is starting a pilot program mid-year, and so what we're attempting to do is we have an issue right now with child welfare. We have a manpower issue in social services. So what we're attempting to do is trying to go ahead and get additional assistance in social services, but with the understanding that this additional assistance or to transition into the new pilot program of the State Family First Prevention Services. Either way, manpower is needed to deal with the children that are being dealt with. The social services extend a certain position. We believe this position will eventually also expand into Medicaid expansion. And what's not listed here is any personnel needed for Medicaid expansion. Mr. Webster and I are going to be having some meetings with the state to start getting a better understanding of that. That is all dependent upon the state budget being passed. There will be some funding associated with it, but until we have a better understanding of what that is, we can't come back and present to you what the needs of social services would be. Health department, this is actually an elimination of a position. It was a regional position that was solely being operated for Haywood County, and at this point, we've just transitioned that back to Haywood County. Recreation, you can see that's 3.5 positions for the aquatic facility. This is to be hired on staggered terms beginning January 2024. It includes a site manager, head lifeguard, and 1.5 administrative assistant program. The hiring dates will really be dictated about the opening dates. The whole goal is to basically, we need the manager in there a couple months before we actually open so they can be part of the final training and the final initiation of all that. You really need you want your manager involved in all of those conversations. And then ultimately, as we open, we'll start hiring these other staff too, as needed. But the actual hire date really is going to be dictated about when we really have a good idea when the open date is going to be. And so that's where I talk about all of these things. Recreation, that was actually presented to the public in regards to what it would take for staff to run that facility when it was voted. Next is hospitalization dental insurance. We got this good news at our planning session. There are no proposed rate increases for that, not for the county, but also for those with dependent coverage. Workers' compensation will increase by 3%, liability insurance by 2%. Next portion of this is capital improvements. And Darlene was just talking about this. That number right there, $2,064,000, actually represents the equipment and vehicles. It states capital improvements, but this is really just the capital. Capital improvements are a separate number down here. So it's being proposed $1,502,822 for equipment. Highlights under this category: computer, servers, printer, software, garage equipment, cleaning equipment, ground maintenance equipment, recreation equipment. That does include playground for Canada, to replace that playground equipment. Law enforcement radios, cameras, emergency communication equipment. It's being recommended. A lot of this gets held off until the audit, but some of this we proceed forward with because it just needs to be done. We will proceed forward with the playground. Vehicles, it's proposed at $564,024 vehicles. Includes $252,000 for 5 new vehicles for the sheriff. As you recall, this year we went ahead, we received some of those vehicles early, but also understand I'm recommending that you hire more people. Those more people need more the additional vehicles. So normal replacement rate is 8, but what this is really about is really equipping the new officers is what this is. We've already really purchased the vehicles that was normal in the recycling system. So this also includes $70,000 for 2 code enforcement vehicles, $104,000 for ground maintenance, 2 replacement vehicles, $37,300 for an extension vehicle, and $30,000 for a social services replacement vehicle. Improvements highlights in this category include cashier's code enforcement painting, replacement of HVAC unit and painting for the recreation center, Cashier's Recreation Center, repairs to the jail areas, booking cabinets, and kitchen shelving. Now, this is a phase 2 of that. This has been ongoing with our jail. 2 HVAC units and a generator included for this jail. That generator has been put off for multiple years. It is a high dollar cost, but it's one of these things the jail's just going to have to go through. And once it's a big deal. At least that generator, it really wasn't always just about money, even though it's a high dollar cost. It's a significant issue. You may have to be talking about moving individuals out if we can't transition over appropriately. So we do need to replace the generator. Other improvements include the Coley Rec Center building updates, Fairview concession road paving, repair of the Silver Pool, Mark Watson paving, department home, aging roof. Just going a little bit detail for you all on that. The Department of Aging, beautiful building. See all those gables that are out the front? I mean, I don't know how many, there's quite a few, but we're dealing with rot issues in those gables. So this is going to be not a small repair. It's not just a single gable. We've had to bring in an engineer. We've got an engineer working on a contractor that ties into the roof. We didn't have contractors who were willing to mess with it until we got an engineer report on it. But just, I want to point that out to the board because that will cause disruption to service as we go through and start trying to repair those roofs. We're just going to have to do the best we can. But you know, since those gables tie into the main roof, it's going to have some potential disruption to operations. Then you can see road improvements and office at the Green Energy Park. Also included is a match for Highway 107 sidewalk construction. That also includes the match for the sidewalks that are going to go for the. This is another thing that we had it half right. It's going to go for the roundabout that's being built at Monteith Gap Road and South Painter Road. There's a roundabout there. And so the new rule with DOT is they'll build sidewalks if you cost share with them. So if we don't cost share with them, we don't get sidewalks on these facilities. So if you look at the 107 project, what that is sidewalks right at the town line. That's basically right at the high school going up to Fairview. So if we want sidewalks there, then we have to cost share with DOT. And same thing when you look at the roundabout at Monteith Gap Road and Colby. We're going to want sidewalks and so forth to tie everything in, so we do have to cost share. That's like $35,000 just there right there is the amount of that cost share. The proposed projects be funded from 2 different sources: $2,124,000 from the general fund and $370,300 from the Conservation Preservation Recreation Fund. Next item is discussing the current 2018-22 facility. This is our major facility capital improvement plan and the new plan that we still need to work through. We're not able to work through it until we get some other things answered, but ultimately just the old plan was the health department, the animal rescue center, and the justice center. As you know, obviously the health department's done. The animal rescue center will be opening up this summer. Justice center should move forward with architects on that. Just so you know why that's been, I'm needing to get the animal rescue center done before I'm committing time to multiple other projects. Once that gets done, that'll allow me to free up time to start going down the process of the architect for the Justice Center itself. The 23-27 plan already includes things that have already been basically approved or approved to move forward with. That's the Aquatic Center, the Domestic Violence Shelter, the Whittier Fall Park. I did verify that the Fall Park and the Glenville Cashier's Splash Pad, both of those designed to go out the bid will be done in the fall. It's one's September and one is October. I made that phone call to Rusty today just to verify that. Moving on from CIP planning is the Jackson County Board of Education is proposed to allocate $9,417,613. This is 4% proposed increase to public schools for next fiscal year. And you can see that's 7.9 for current operations, 147 for PIL. I will say, although we put a 4% increase on that, that really is not dictated. That's a transfer for us. So that's payment in lieu of taxes. That's for federal land. So in essence, whatever that ends up being that we get from the federal government that passes through. Then $880 in teacher supplements and $460 for counselors. Proposed capital, this comes out of the Article 40 and Article 42. You can see that's 40% of Article 40 and 60% of Article 42 sales tax. And the proposed capital outlay, this is sort of the annual operating cost for them, is $1,585,700. These are standard lines. I will say the capital outlay itself, because they're needing just capital in general, that was running $225 a year. But just furniture and things of that nature, that's been increased. Our sales tax, and remember, this comes out of mandated sales tax that has to go to the school system. And there's an added line here, and that's the $130,000 for the master plan. As everybody recalls, during the budget planning process, there are a lot of questions that were asked. There was a request to the Board of Education. They've gone and gotten a cost estimate for this plan, and that is the cost estimate of $130,000. This next paragraph talks about recommending the budget an additional $2.5 million for public school capital expenditures out of the Articles 40 and 42. That's not to be expended. That's basically setting you up for your planning process. Remember, we need the master plan. Once you get the master plan, then you and the Board of Education can set priorities. And you're going to set priorities based upon the money that's basically being set aside. It's mandated to be set aside. And then the next item is that we budget an additional $2.6 billion out of the 46. And remember, Article 46 is for educational purposes. So it's not mandated necessarily for K through 12, it's educational purposes, whereas Articles 40 and 42 can only go through K through 12. And so these sales tax funds, future grants, and available lottery proceeds, that's what's going to dictate the public schools 24-28 facility capital improvement plan, which will be based upon this $130,000 master planning process that we'll go through. Next is Southwestern Community College is proposed to move forward with a 4% increase for their operational cost, and their capital is it's proposed to appropriate $154,850. This is for mandated fire alarm facility upgrades, and then $50,000 for incidental repairs. Next is our Jackson County Public Library. This is really for our Jackson County Library and Albert Carlton Library is proposed for a 4% increase for those operations. We do have other appropriations under general fund, and I try to break those down into three main categories. That's safety meaning fire, forestry, rescue, EMS. 2 is community development centers and nonprofits. And 3 is contingencies. So under the safety and fire, it's proposed that Canada, Savannah, Baltimore, Guam. Those are all the departments remaining mainly with volunteers, along with Jackson County Rescue Squad and the Glenville Cashers Rescue Squad all receive a 4% increase in their annual allocation. Matching funds will be made available for equipment purchased under grant funding. If you remember, they come to you, they talk about generally it's personal protective equipment, sometimes vehicles, and they will ask for matching funds. That's being budgeted for that program. The Civil Fire Department's being funded, proposed at $1,070,308. This amount includes a debt reduction of $45,158. That's actually how much the debt payment for that building went down. Okay? But then that's being reduced to $45,000. Then it's being proposed to add 4% to that. Okay? And the 4%, if you notice me going through it, really is doing the best we can. CPI is actually it's getting down to around, it's getting closer to 5%. Doesn't quite match the consumer price index, but trying to balance the budget. And 4% really across the board of these entities is the most we could get in the balance the budget. I will tell you, in the fire budget is proposed, it's not here, but it is proposed to, and it's budgeted, to put $50,000 for architectural fees for the Canada Firehouse. The Canada, I believe we briefly talked about this. I've gone up toured around. That facility is owned by Jackson County. So ultimately, it's also a community center and it's a firehouse. So as I toured around, it became obvious to me. So once we get to a certain level of renovation, we have to have by law, have to have an architect involved in the conversation. And so it became obvious to me with the electrical upgrades and things that need to be done, HVAC upgrades, that we're going to go beyond that threshold. So at this point, I'm proposing budget money for an architect to go out and help us start putting together specs, things of that nature. I don't know what the cost of that facility upgrades will be, but the first step is to go through this process. So, excuse me. This budget allows Silva to continue on with their 8 full-time fire personnel, and if the town of Silva chooses to add additional personnel, then they can do it with the town funding. I can tell you, they did not request this additional personnel. I believe they requested level funding. This isn't quite level funding. That 45 reduced it by about 5%, then I increased it by 4%. So it's pretty close to the level funding. But just so you know, they didn't ask for that. All those conversations are being held before town Silva did not go follow through that. Coal Fire Department being proposed to be funded at $1,103,000. This also includes we make their debt payment for their building. They have a debt reduction of $15,750, and we reimburse them for their debt payment. And then that includes a 4% increase for their budget itself. So these two departments are being treated the same. And this will enable the department to continue having paid members 24/7. And just a reminder that these departments, both these departments, provide mutual aid to all the other surrounding fire departments. It's proposed Fortune Service receive their funding as requested of $99,656. We are also including the continuation or the debt payment of $350,000 for the Glenville Crashers Rescue Squad facility at the cost of $4,500,000. And so once that gets going and we get that annual payment going, then that won't be part of this summer anymore. But until that happens, I'm going to keep mentioning that they need to complete the building and get the debt service fully rolling. The next category is, excuse me, the CDC and nonprofits proposed community development centers funding. They all remain the same, and it's proposed that most nonprofits be held at level funding, except for 2. That's the Community Table and Cola Wheat Revitalization, and that's because these are not increased funding. If you take the Community Table, they were receiving $10,000, and I'm proposing to take them back to $20,000. The reason being is because when they received all the COVID dollars, they actually reduced their request to us. So they were getting 20 grand, but then they were receiving all these federal dollars and state dollars, and they reduced their request to us. Now those dollars are going away. They're just asking to get back to level funding, and it's the same way with the Cola Wheat Revitalization. Excuse me, Cola Wheat Revitalization Group is level funding prior to COVID pandemic. That's a $3,000 amount. Next is contingencies. Proposed $399,000 in contingency for general purposes. That's the funds you see that gets reported to you and the finance officer's report when those funds are used. And it's also funds available to you when you have other projects. It's proposed $1,172,000 for equipment purchases. That's the same money that was just described earlier. What we do is we put it into one single line item and we buy it all out of the lineup. Prices change, they go up, they go down. We make sure it stays within what you see as being approved, but we end up putting it in that one line item, and that's how it gets delayed until the audit is received, except for things that we know that are priority. And then there is $25,000 for internship and work programs. I am trying to get the work program started back up again, working with Heights. Just the basic concept on that is honestly just trying to get some high school kids employed in the county. It's not an internship program. This is a straight work program. This is trying to get them out of animal shelter, cleaning the kennels, getting out of maintenance, and it's really just trying to build some work ethic with people. And so the next category is American Rescue Plan Act and opioid settlement funds. As you recall, we do have some ARPA monies left over, and then obviously you have made no decisions on the opioid settlement dollars. And so I'll just make a statement here, remaining and future funds in these programs will be expended for programs to be decided upon on a case-by-case basis. Hopefully, we're still waiting on the announcement for the dogwood grant that would help us do some additional planning. And then the sheriff bringing in their MAT program in the jail. Hopefully, within a year, we will have a good plan on how we're going to start spending those opioid settlement dollars over the next, the 17 years. And so hopefully we'll have a good plan on how that's going to be spent. Next section is the special fund highlights. These are funds that fall outside of the $88 million just discussed. Just also want to mention that some of these other funds in the amount, the general fund budget includes transfers to some of these other funds in the amount of $11,651,000 to support capital projects, recreation, conservation, debt service. Just like money does transfer back and forth between the general fund and some of these funds. So solid waste is proposed operating budget be at $5,212,822. This constitutes a 1.69% increase. Just a reminder, this fund is completely funded for fees collected for the service. There are no major operational changes at this point. We're not proposing any increase in availability fees. And it's just really on that last couple of sentences. As you know, we were out to bid for all of the contracts. And bid results are going to dictate the level of service, and it's going to dictate what these fees will be. So, Chairman Letson, going back to whether or not we can evaluate additional SRC sites or all that, it's going to be dictated when we get these bids in, see what our budget is, see what we have allocated, and then you'll have to make decisions. If there money's left over, then maybe we can do that, or we maybe have to talk about services and our fees. But we just don't know until we get the bids in. Next is the 911 fund, the emergency telephone fund. Operating budget is supposed to be level at $314,070. Reminder to everybody, this money is just the little extra fees you see on your phone bills and your cell phone bill. The real property revaluation fund is proposed to be at $600,500. This constitutes a 20.5% increase. So there are fees in this fund. They're receiving the COLA and the one-step increase. But the main portion of this increase really is contracted services for oversight of the revaluation process. This is the third year of a 4-year revaluation. So, and this year is when we have to up our contracts for private services to come in and actually assist us with the evaluation process. Next is the Green Energy Fund, proposed budget of $331,516. It's a constituted proposed increase of 4.93%. Over current budget funds, employees in this fund will receive a one-step pay increase and a 3% cost of living adjustment. There are no other major items. Of course, we did talk about that additional part-time personnel to assist out there. Economic development is proposed to get $195,000. Of course, we do have the employee in this fund that will receive the one-step increase in 3% COLA. And this overall fund is being proposed to be increased by 11.16%. That's besides salaries, it's basically some contract services that are increasing. The Fire Tax Fund, now these are fire operations outside the general fund. Is Highlands Fire and Rescue and the Cashers Glenville Volunteer Fire Department. Both these budgets are supposed to be level. So the Highlands Fire and Rescue is at $84,000, and the current fire tax rate of $272 per $100 value is proposed to be the same. The Cashers Glenville Volunteer Fire Department's proposed budget is $1,844,634. This constitutes same level funding. The current fire tax rate of $294 per $100 value is remaining the same also. We do have other funds, and again, that's where I recommend for detail, go back to the table of contents and look up this name, and it'll take you straight to that fund. But you can see school capital reserve fund, school capital reserve fund. These are the funds where we talk about percentages of the Article 4042. These are funds that are mandated for us to move those monies around from general fund to eventually expenditures. Economic Development Fund, Community Development Fund, Law Enforcement Fund, the Conservation Preservation Recreation Fund, Debt Service, Clean Water Revolving Fund, and Airport Authority. Next topic is fee schedules. What I do is list out all the fee schedules, mileage reimbursement, hospital dental insurance rates, recreation center fees and charges, pool fees and charges, senior center participation fee schedule, permitting and code enforcement fees, planning fees, health fees, transit fees, and solid waste fees. It is recommended changes to some of these fees. Before I go through those, we did have some conversations about pool fees. And so, what at this point we did have, so part of when we presented all this to be voted on by the public, is understood we were going to change fees and go through the fee schedule. Well, we felt like we should wait till we get closer to opening to have these conversations, and then closer to coming up with some concepts and ideas on how we want to promote usage and so forth. So just to let you know, it's not necessarily to do, we will have some fees for the pool before the pool opens, but we plan on having those conversations mid-year, basically. And then the proposed changes are the mile rate reimbursement is requested to increase to the 2023 IRS rate to 65.5 cents. We're currently at 56. We missed the last rate increase, and so we're asking that we just increase that. We do encourage everybody. We do have vehicles for everybody. Encourage everybody to use vehicles, but not everybody can use county vehicles. So when they do have to use their personal vehicles for county business, it's only fair to reimburse them at the applicable rate. Hospital dental rates will remain the same. Solid waste availability remain the same. There are minor changes, and we can talk about this at a later date. One change in the planning, and a couple of small changes, very small in the health department fees, but we'll go back and look at that, but they're very incidental. So in closing, the public hearing is scheduled for June 6, 2023. That public hearing is on this proposed budget. As you all, at this point today, it becomes your budget, so you can make changes all the way up until you adopt it. The public will be able to examine the proposed budget, as I stated earlier, on the county's website, and hard copies will be made available in administration, my office, and also in the finance office. The budget is tentatively scheduled to be approved at the commissioners' meeting on June 20th, 2023, after the board has had an opportunity to make its final adjustments. So, I do want to express my appreciation to all county employees. I think we have great employees who work extremely hard to provide services to our citizens. I also want to extend my thanks to department heads, elected officials, other representatives for their cooperation. This is a large process. It starts in January, and for them to go through the entire process, follow through the directions from finance office. Just appreciate their cooperation in this whole process. And then finally, I thank Darlene and her staff, because they put a tremendous amount of effort and time into putting all this information together. So, Mr. Chairman, County Commissioners, I respectfully submit the recommended budget for your consideration in the upcoming weeks.
I think it goes without saying that we thank you for this proposed budget, and I can't wait to get into it. And thank you, Ms. Fox. I know it's not easy to gather up all this information and then bring it all home. So I think I speak for the board when I say thank you for all your hard work. Look forward to getting into it a little more. Any other questions from the board?
And just a reminder, I think our next meeting is it May 23rd? Remember the morning is when we'll have the sheriff, Board of Education, SEC, the library, and then after today, we're going to start making phone calls to the nonprofits to see who wishes to appear, and then that will be the early afternoon. And if we do have them scheduled to come, we'll make sure we have some type of lunch here for that. And then, ultimately, depending upon where we're at in the day after the nonprofits, that's your first opportunity to start making comments, questions, things of that nature. Please, if you've got any specific questions, please feel free to email me. And this is the process. At this point, myself and staff, we're here as spectators and to provide information to you as a board for you to make final decisions.
Moving on, do we need to make a motion
For this,
for
no,
this?
sir.
This is just strictly informational. Okay. Moving on to old business and the NCDHHS Children and Family Specialty Plan letter that we've been kind of going around with, and how to word those for the LME, MCO recommendations, and how we feel as a board that really it's more about housing than anything for these children. So, Mr. Adams, I'll turn it over to you.
Self-explanatory. Ultimately, what I ended up doing is, you're exactly right, Mr. Chairman. I really, at this point, this letter concentrates more about, while all these letters are being sent around that we're still housing children at social services. It basically states that the letter from the secretary, or really none of these letters, are truly addressing the urgent crisis that's occurring. And that we're requesting the governor's office, I'm just trying to name everybody, Department of Health and Human Services, the legislature focus on the real issue of building provider and institutional capacity.
Right.
Just a place to send these people, these children with their real needs. Any additional strategies to provide institutional capacity should be funded and implemented while having to wait for a long 18-month request. So whether we're going through an RFP process or not going through an RFP process, this is an immediate urgent crisis. It needs to be dealt with now, not 18 months from now or 2 years from now, for whatever solution they may or may not believe that this RFP process would provide. And that, just recognizing we understand it's complex and we're here and we want to partner with everybody. But right now, we're still dealing with housing children in our social services building.
Urgent need of children is
Nobody's fixing the problem.
Right.
Talking around the problem.
worried about who's going to be getting a Medicaid contract, not necessarily helping any children.
Talk about the problem for years, so solving is the issue.
Is there a motion for approval of this letter?
It looks a lot better than the last one, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Stribling,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson, Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Letson.
Yes. Okay. Is there any questions from the press tonight? Moving on now, we'll have a 5-minute recess and then open up closed session for personnel.
And legal, and I'll get the word in the way it needs to be. I printed it somewhere, I don't have it.
Okay.
It'll be personnel and legal, yes.
Okay. Perfect. So we'll take a 5-minute break. closed session, we have nothing to disclose. No action was taken. So with no further business on the agenda, we have a special budget meeting at 23rd at 9 a.m. And I'll seek a motion for adjournment. So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? We are adjourned.